afternoon. I'm Julie Youngquist, the CEO of Streetwise, and this is Suzanne Haney, our editor of Streetwise magazine. You're on with Streetwise Live for the next 25 minutes on CAN TV, Channel 21. We're also streaming live on cantv.org/hotline. You can also join the conversation with the number you see on the bottom of the screen right there, 312-738-1060. Excellent. So today is exciting. We have a special guest in the studio. Suzanne will be talking with photographer Randy Marters about his work. Randy's work is the feature story in this week's Streetwise magazine. For those of you who are new to us, Streetwise is an organization focused on economic empowerment for those Chicagoans facing poverty and homelessness. We produce a weekly magazine that we sell to our licensed and trained vendors, who then sell the magazine to the public for profit and tips. They are entrepreneurs invested in their own economic advancement. Before we go to the interview though, Suzanne, do you want to say a few words generally about the editorial viewpoint and the content that we really try to put in the magazine to make it interesting each week?
Well, I feel that our content, our vendors are people who are either low income or homeless. And so I feel that our viewpoint is, we know that Chicago is a world-class city and trying to be more of a world-class city to attract new businesses. So our focus is, how do we accept everybody who's here? How do we keep the people who are here in their home? How do we keep them living in the city that they love, that they've spent years working to build? So that's part of it. How do we do things cheaply? How do we do the insider's view? Because that's what'll keep us here. How do we make Chicago equitable for all and affordable for all? And so when we look at city policies, we're like, yes, this is a good thing, but how do we leverage perhaps money that is spent by higher income people to benefit lower income people? What's the little hidden things going on here that make the policy work?
Sure. Well, this week's issue is perfect within that editorial viewpoint as we welcome Randy to talk about street photography.
So Randy, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? You say you've been a photographer since the 80s, and you were in an advertising agency, and then you decided it would be more fun to do photography because that's what you were doing. You were capturing downtown Chicago, State Street, Michigan Avenue, etc.
Yeah, I moved to Chicago in 1982 from Mendota, Illinois.
Oh, I know Mendota.
Small little town, famous for the Sweet Corn Festival.
It's on Interstate 55,
Yeah, it's
near Joliet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just sort of outgrew that and came to Chicago. I thought I was going to take pictures of skyscrapers, and when I started walking around the streets of Chicago, I fell in love with the people and the action and sort of shifted my focus to street photography, which I had known nothing about until I got here. But I mean, I knew of Henry Cartier-Bresson, famous photographer, and his work.
Paris, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Who everybody tries to emulate, but
What is it about him?
oh, everything. His compositions, his subject matter. It's just the decisive moment, which he coined the phrase, just that instant when life is revealed.
You say that Chicago has become more sterile now, and it's harder to find the city's soul. Let's go through some of your pictures. I feel that the reason it was a perfect fit for our niche is that the vendors, well, Chicago is, as I say, a world-class city and trying to be more of a world-class city. And we all tend to try to have that corporate look. But perhaps not everybody has it, and it's important that people not be frightened by people who don't look familiar, that it's okay to have people looking individual. And so I think that's what you're talking about. The vendors are the vendors, and we want them to be accepted. We want individuals to be accepted and people to understand that. So we're starting with your story. We're going to open it all up here for a second and look at the overhead. We're going to zoom out. There we go. That's the entire spread. In the Loop, we're calling it, Street Photography by Randy Marters. Why don't you describe this one first? That's one of your favorites, I think.
Yes, I actually, I'll do a quick plug. I did a book. That's how you found out
That's
about
how we
me.
found out about you?
I
Okay.
mailed it to you. It was called In the Loop.
Okay.
I was actually thinking about calling it Streetwise, but the name was already taken.
We got it. Thank you.
So I didn't do that. So I just went with In the Loop.
Okay.
Since that's where most pictures are taken, you know, generally I move around lakefront, river north, and that too. This guy, I was walking down State Street one day, and he zoomed by me on roller skates. And it was so fast. It was in the age of non-autofocus cameras and that, so I didn't get anything. And I thought, oh, there went a good one. And I sort of walked in the direction he went, hoping that maybe I'd see him again, which was a long shot. But as I walked down North State, he was sitting in front of ABC TV watching the monitor, and he was transfixed on the screen. So it was too good a picture to pass up, so I just got my nerve up and said, "Can I take your picture?"
And you said that he didn't answer.
He ignored me completely. And so I got brave and asked him again, and he ignored me again. So I figured, this is too good.
And you've said that at times people don't understand that there is a freedom. You are free to shoot people on the street because it is a public area, right? And people don't realize that, I think.
Yes, the general law is that anybody that's in public, like on a street, has no right to privacy. You can take their picture. The problems come in if you use the picture commercially. For art's sake, like galleries, books, and things like that, you can pretty much take a picture and do whatever you want with it. So far, the Supreme Court hasn't changed that yet.
And I would imagine that it's getting even more liberal with cell phones because everybody's shooting
yeah.
all the time. You
Yeah.
can't really, everybody's doing it, so we're not going to discriminate.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was someone you shot, as you say, you shoot things, you shoot from your stomach sometimes, you sometimes look like you're using a camera, but a lot of times you try to be as
Discreet,
candid as
yeah,
possible.
yeah.
Okay, so let's look at this one too. I'm gonna go back to the overhead, and we're gonna zoom into the overhead, okay? And we're gonna zoom here. This is one of little kids looking at a lingerie store, and this is like a naughty lingerie store, and you thought the whole idea of the innocence lost and everything, or kind of like wondering what they're doing, was what made it intriguing.
Yeah, that was the old State Street. I don't remember the exact date of that. I'm sure it's in the back of the book, but it was like probably in the 1980s.
Okay.
Back when those shops existed on State Street.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, you don't usually see kids looking at lingerie. And I had no idea what they were thinking, but I thought, hey, that's pretty interesting, kids looking at lingerie.
So we have a caller. Hello?
Yes, I want to know your opinion about if the art of photography is being diminished by today's iPhone, like everyone having like an iPhone or like a device to take pictures with rather than like a professional camera, and like his intake on the future of photography.
Yeah, you're the expert there.
I don't think it hurts. Photography is good, so the more people taking pictures, probably the better. The quality might not be as good, and like 2 years ago, all you saw was cell phone cameras. The last couple years, I've seen a lot of people with big cameras.
Really?
So I'm thinking maybe people have taken cell phone cameras and not been satisfied with the quality of the picture and decided that, hey, maybe a good, you know, 24 million megapixel or whatever would be a lot better way to do it. So
I agree. I think it gets it out there and it becomes an issue and people are interested in it, and so they want more then.
yeah.
Okay, they want to go farther. Well, let's look some more at some others of your pictures. I like this one a lot. This is at 4th Presbyterian Church on Michigan Avenue, and this is the juxtaposition between an older woman and her bride, and then this is their courtyard with a fountain.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just predisposed to see the contrast in things or what, or that's just something that developed over the years. But the second I saw it, I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Here you have an old lady that didn't appear to have a husband with her or anything. So I don't know if she was ever married, outlived her husband or what, but just the fact that she was there looking,
Yeah.
elderly, and there in the sort of a misty background was the bride, which sort of is the beginning of it all, or the antithesis of the old age.
You actually couldn't have staged it better. Now let's look at this gentleman. We both know this gentleman. I've had a job on Michigan Avenue for over 20 years, and I have seen this gentleman shop in the store where I'm at. He is carrying a cross, and this is at Water Tower Place, and in the background is Tragedy Follows Capture. That's what you thought made the photo so unique. I'm going to see if this is big enough. No, let's see. And there is, the Sun Times salesman is holding that. But at any rate, this gentleman is passing Water Tower Place. I would say he's Latino and carrying a cross, sort of to represent the travails of human life. He's reminding people on Michigan Avenue. But at any rate, Tragedy Follows Capture was the headline.
I'll be honest, I didn't know when I took the picture that the guy was holding up a paper that said tragedy follows capture. But sometimes that's the way photography works, you just get lucky.
And so biblically it seemed to fit.
Yes.
And you were thrilled about the luck that happened.
I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. So then this is a lady, I'm going to go back to the overhead here. We actually know this lady. This is Lee Godey, and she was a street photographer, as you say, in the late 80s and early 1990s. You tell me your story about her, and then I'll tell you mine.
She was just everywhere. She used to hang around on the steps of the Art Institute mostly, and she did, once in a while she did watercolors, crayons. Sometimes she even worked in oils, but I don't think that happened very often. And she just considered herself a great artist, and she always sat there and tried to sell her work. And in the early 90s and probably the entire 1990s, she was really big because there were people that, would buy her stuff on a weekly basis.
Art and art galleries as well.
Yes.
And so there's this one picture back to this now. This is a lady, this was her typical art. There is a blondish kind of woman with eyes looking sideward and kind of in a horrified view. And so you thought that this was a great shot because she did actually, this is the Neiman Marcus window, and she's got her portfolio here, and she was sleeping in the window and with her pictures with her. And so you thought the picture that she had painted looked like it was commenting on her state there.
Yes.
Yeah.
As time went on, she, she sort of went downhill over time, and this was sort of later in the progression of her life. So she used to look a lot better than that and was better kept, but on the street, things get harder over time, so.
And it's hard to know exactly what her situation is. I actually knew her from the Walgreens at Michigan and Chicago Avenue. She used to call me Blondie. I used to wait on her fairly regularly. I used to sell her hot dogs and Hershey bars, and I sold her 59-cent poster board and magic markers. Mm-hmm. And so one time this is my real Lee Godey story. One time she came in, we had lipstick samples on the counter, and she smeared her cheeks with them. She had a kind of a crazy eyeliner on, a really static eyeliner. And so she looked at the lipstick and she looked at me and she said, "Why don't you wear more makeup?" She said, "You'd sell more." Really concerned, And so as she was going out the door, she had her portfolio in front of her. She was going out the revolving door, and she said, "Remember, more rouge and lipstick." And I was kind of horrified that she'd been giving me beauty advice. I related that to our cosmetic supervisor, and she put it out in a memo to everybody else. "Remember, girls, more rouge and lipstick." We were just kind of like, but at any rate, she came in, she disappeared for a while, and then I understand, I'm not sure who exactly took care of her, but she was in assisted living, and she came in cleaned up, I guess not far before she died.
So do you think that's you?
I hope not. I hope not. So what else, what do you think is the quintessential Chicago picture? What do we look like? What is our what do we say to the world?
I think we're just real people, you know, like, I don't know, maybe other cities think they're real people too, but Chicagoans are down to earth, you know, like, they're pretty approachable. I mean, I was shy to start with, and I was hesitated to take a lot of the pictures that I take now, but, you know, they're just real people, you know, I think that's sort of what Chicago's famous for, isn't it? Real people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go through a couple others. Why don't you describe? Let me see. This one we're gonna. Okay, we're gonna do the overhead here, and we'll zoom in. This one I thought. Okay, I love this one. I think I'll get even closer. Is this one here? This is a gentleman looking at a lady. He's probably homeless, looking at a lady inside who's eating. She's comfortable, he's not. Kind of looks like Edward Hopper to me, a little bit like the Nighthawks. This one you thought was a moment in time. This was a couple of shadows, just legs caught in time. And then this here looked like a young man from a barber college. He's holding a white head with curls on it, and then all his friends are clowning.
Yeah, I like the seriousness of his face. It was like, you know, like, I asked him if I could take his picture. He said, surprisingly, yes, but I just thought the idea of, I mean, this isn't racially, you know, motivated, but I just thought the idea of a black kid holding a white head was sort of funny.
Well,
so I thought he might be hesitant to say, you know, to agree to the picture just because of that. But
I think he was serious, though, because he was a serious barber student. I think that's what he saw himself as, because he's got the head protective, and this is a head that he's working on. See, there's the little curlers on it. So he's definitely a serious student.
His friends thought it was sort of funny.
Oh, and now this one I love. This one's the little girl who is kind of, describe that. She's, don't do what I do, do what I say. Somebody gave her a bad example, is what you're saying.
She was at the DePaul Center, and I sat down next to her just to take a break one day, and she was sitting there. I think that was her father or grandfather or guardian or whatever in the background. And while I was sitting there resting, she took out a little notebook and she tore off a page and she rolled it up really neatly like a cigarette, and then she started to pretend to smoke it. And I never knew if, like, you know, for all I knew it was a joint, could have been just a cigarette. I'm thinking, that girl's learned some things she shouldn't know, you know, but that was it. And then when she saw me do it, you know, when she saw me taking the picture, she gave me the look like, oh, you're taking my picture? Well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but hey, it's one of those cases that good picture, you take it. If you get yelled at, you get yelled at.
And then this was a gentleman. What was the situation there?
He was just sitting at the Art Institute in the garden area by the fountain, and I don't know what was going on. I mean, it was just his eyes. His eyes were mesmerizing, and I didn't know. I mean, it almost looks like he was blind, but when I walked up to him, he wasn't. And so I asked him if I could take his picture, and I thought, you know, sometimes when you ask people to take their picture, they think you're picking on them because they're different or something like that, which is sort of true, but you don't want to admit it, you know. So you sit there and say, you know, like, oh no, the lines you have to use are sort of unique, you know, like, oh, you have a very interesting face, oh, you have a unique look, you know, this and that. So I just asked him if I could take his picture, and he said yes, and I thought, well, this is cool, and I took the picture. He never said a word, actually.
So with the book, what do you feel you've captured? I mean, now you've captured it. It's been a little bit since it's out. You must have more feelings about it than when you first published it.
I'm just happy I did it. I mean, I've I've been trying to be discovered, so to speak, for a long time. I haven't worked at it real hard, but every once in a while I would send my pictures to a gallery or, a publication to see if I could get published and maybe become rich and famous, which never happened. But I was in the Tribune once in a while back in the 80s when they used to have the back page of the Tribune. It was called Midwest Portrait.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to tell the story, a life story, like this is what people do, like I'm sort of a voyeur about it all, but I think I have an interesting perspective, and I think maybe I've been doing it so long, I see things that a lot of people might miss, and I think it's I try and be interesting and entertaining and maybe a little philosophical at the same time.
Okay. And philosophically, have you got a line for us, a closing line?
All I can say is I love what I do. I got so lucky to meet my wife that to have the freedom to be out on the streets and do the challenge. I consider this the most challenging kind of photography. I take pictures of nature at times and other things, but street photography requires such dedication and determination that I just love it. I'm so happy that I fell into it and have done it my whole life, and I just hope it works, that people can enjoy it.
And I think you've left a legacy as to how we see ourselves in the 80s and 90s, and maybe whether there isn't a lesson there about being your true self.
Hopefully, people can get whatever they want out of pictures. I just hope they enjoy it and it means something to interpret the picture however you want, but just enjoy it.
Thank you so much for being our guest today.
My pleasure.
You bet. So, back to this, and Julie and I are going to give a quick update on the last issues. The next few issues, rather.
Awesome, what a great interview.
Thank you.
In the Loop, Street Photography by Randy Marters. Actually, some of the closing stuff about loving the challenge of being on the streets and the determination and the grit it takes to really dedicate to something that you love or that's something that you're passionate about. I mean, I can see why it was in Streetwise magazine.
Yeah.
It's completely within our
niche.
Our niche and our vendors, they're out there doing something that many of them truly love, which is a challenge, but they're determined and all
They
the
don't
better for
necessarily
it.
fit the corporate mold, but you know what? We're supposed to be able to be individuals in this country, and so
Sure.
it fits.
So, just a reminder, for the next couple minutes, you are on Streetwise Live on CAN TV Channel 21. Suzanne, we have a couple minutes left. Why don't we talk about some of the upcoming issues?
The next issue you will be seeing will be our guide to Chicago's riverfront. It is the second waterfront for Chicago. Actually, it's been intermittent construction since 1998. It was facilitated by Wacker Drive's reconstruction because there became little turnabouts on the south side of the river where there was more land. And Mayor Emanuel saw that we were building a lot of parks on both the south, 2 parks on the north side, 2 on the south side. So he started to see that maybe we should develop the entire riverfront. So there is a 1.25 miles from the lake to Lake and Franklin, which is the turn on the river. And it has about 10 restaurants. There are restaurants, bars, there's a docking area, there's a floating area of like floating gardens where you can fish. There's the curve of the river where they've got Adirondack chairs and you can look at the curve of the river and there's some new artwork there. You can look at an artwork that's going to be in the fall at the Merchandise Mart, which has a new name, the Mart. So there's birds, there's all kinds of nature, so it's everything. You see people, it's a true experience. It's a lot of fun. I would say it's one of my new top 5 attractions for Chicago. So we're talking about the riverfront attraction and then the overlying policy that's going into effect, the Great Rivers Plan, which is the 3 rivers. It's the Calumet, the Des Plaines, the Chicago River, and the idea that we will have riverfront attractions which will spur the economy and tourism and also our enjoyment.
I am really looking forward to that issue, and we, once again, are out of time. So thank you for watching Streetwise, and we'll see you next week.